What's the liquor store there on Southwest Boulevard?
Well, I don't know, that's your territory. I'm not a liquor store
Well, it's a
guy.
major intersection. It's a major intersection.
That was a test. It was
Anyway,
gonna
it's up the hill on Summit. That's where we're going.
When we go to Ponax, that's where we go to get a six-pack for the
Yeah.
ride home?
There you go.
Ice down and go to the park.
No, I know what you're talking about. Royal.
Royal, yeah. Well, just, you were telling, you said I get to navigate, just kind of tell me where it is. It's just
But just up the hill. Okay.
17th and Summit.
So what's the best way to go? Take I-35 or go state line?
What are state line or Rainbow or, you know, whatever. We're going to,
I-35 to Rainbow, because then they got construction
yeah.
over there.
Well, we're going to a Mexican joint at 11:30 today to try it out.
Okay, so I will be at your house at 11. Okay.
Hello, thank you.
Mrs.
I think
Kane, how are you?
Good morning.
Have you ever been to that Dos de Oros over there on Holmes?
More
Oh,
suggestions.
yeah, over there at the Blue River Road. and-
Get these?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
didn't.
place.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good.
Jim and I
Well,
have
well,
probably been to most of the Mexican joints in
Well,
town, both sides of the state line.
This is your challenge, huh?
Yeah, we just looking for good deals, good food, nice people, you know?
Yeah, you got quite a bit.
There's a lot
Quite to choose from, yeah. It used to be Margaritas was like the show in town, but there's so many more kind of like,
Oh, there's all kinds of them. No, the franchise places
Authentic.
are always reliable, but
Yeah.
we kind of go like those
Yeah.
mom and pop deals.
yeah, they lose some of
Don't
their
even know if we need
flavor
it.
after they get to a certain point.
Well,
We like to make sure that the people. You're just not plugged That
That's
helps,
what I keep-
that helps.
I need to go someplace where I have to practice, because we do some shops down in Monterey. So then you're not. And every time I go down there, I'm like, I'm on Duolingo going, okay, I gotta brush up. But there's enough of a population there, KCK especially, that
Oh,
you want to
well,
practice.
in northeast, Kansas City, Missouri, over by where the steel company was.
Yeah, the Truman.
Yeah, Truman and
way up
Independence
north,
and all
yeah,
that.
up by the old museum and everything up there, that area is really.
Trying to place, hey, I've driven,
I used to travel more around town when I was younger, now I live on a dime.
Live on a dime.
South Leawood, I rarely get out of that area, we went down to escape room down by the city market this weekend, and I was like, man, I used to come down here like all the time.
Look at all those big buildings.
can't get out.
Well, look at some of them gone now, because they're redoing the interstate through there.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe when we go down there, I'd like to
could be a
see
big-
how they're doing on the new bridge. That supposedly, they got flyovers and
Yep.
all the stuff, and I'm not,
Well, I noticed some buildings have been demolished.
The house,
down there about
place where all the
Broadway and
towers-
Sixth Street.
Yeah, like there was a,
Up here, here's the neighborhood.
like I said, we like doing these escape rooms. There was one on Third Street and straight west of the city market. Those buildings just aren't there anymore.
got a hold of it.
They just,
I got a hold of him.
Third Street's pretty much been cleared out.
Yeah, I got a hold of him. We talked for quite a while.
Because that,
He's
I think
got
that
all
bridge
kinds
is
of
lands right on
alternatives,
the other side.
Whatever we do.
I always forget to pick that thing up. Oh, no, I got it.
Did you get your minutes and everything?
I don't think I did, actually.
They
I
sent
got an
them out. If
email.
you wanna look at mine, you can.
Oh, did you print them out? No, I've seen them. I looked through them. Actually, I looked through them again this morning, just.
Well, he told me I would have to increase my HELOC loan, which I already had, but, I'd make a 20% payment, basically, and then, once your house is
I was thinking
sold,
that there was a stack down
pay
there
off the loan. I
back in
can't
the
get
day.
a loan from him, but pay off the loan as soon as the house is sold, and there'd be a fee, but.
Excuse me.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've gotta call him. Right. Tim gave me a name called Central Bank too, gave me. But anyway, this is all happening. You've piqued my interest on that one, but. Well,
I just said it's a
No, Carrie and I were together.
yeah,
location.
it's been good on the inside. Have you looked on the inside?
I remember they both left.
Yeah. Well, let me know when we can look at it. I've got to call financial plan. We don't have a quorum yet,
I had gotten to know them.
I guess. Andrew's online. Come on, Andrew. He hasn't been here face to face.
You didn't like
No, I'm here.
The Madam Chair. Hi.
Julie?
Hi, Andrew. I see your name online. Thank you
Okay.
for
Thank you.
attending. Kristen, do we have anybody else online? I see Gareth Matthews. Adam? Okay. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, because I think we count. So, David, so there's 6 of us. So we're good, right?
Yeah, 6 is the quorum.
All righty, Ro. Good morning. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Public Works Committee meeting of July 12th, 2023. Can you believe it's already the middle of July? We do have a quorum. We have Andrew Osmond online. Thank you. I can see Gareth Matthews' name online. Thank you. Adam Broad also asked for the link. He may be joining us. Great, thank you for that. Okay, I'm good to start whenever. All right, so thank you for joining us, and we are here once again to discuss the traffic calming on 132nd Street and High Drive. I can tell you, I walked it last night again from my house to State Line and back, and talking to some of the neighbors with 3 little kids or 4 little kids, and boy, it was a traffic jam. It was, of course, obviously Mission Road is closed right now, but it was fast and it was busy and it was scary. So I walk that route probably 3 or 4 times a week. So I know it well, especially last night between 5 and 6. I did it on purpose just to see rush hour. So, all righty, thank you. So first order of business is a roll call. So Chuck, you want to start us off, just saying your name for the record, please?
Chuck Sipple, City Council, Ward 3.
Chris White, committee.
Marcia Monica, Committee.
Julie Kane, Ward 4 Chair.
Jim Rawlings, Ward 2, Committee, Council, sorry, both.
Andrew Osmond is
Andrew Osmond, Ward 1.
great, and I did see Adam Brawl join us now, so he is here. He asked for the link, so I can see his name as well. Alrighty, so thank you for the roll call, and first thing we need to do, old business, is approve the minutes of the June 7th Public Works Committee meeting. Did everyone get a chance to review the minutes, and is there any corrections? Anything, Chuck, yes?
On the cover sheet on the minutes, it said the summary is of the July 7th. I'd like to change that to July 7th, Public Works. Other than that, they are fine. I move to approve.
And may I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Chuck, and thank you for catching that typo. Appreciate that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Alrighty, the minutes of the June 7th have been approved. All right, moving now to old business, item B is the traffic calming. Everybody should have been able to access this online, and I appreciate our new city clerk is making us look slick and make it easy for everybody, so that's nice. So take it away. I don't know who's gonna start. Dave?
I'll start off. I'm just going to be pretty brief, and then
Okay.
Todd will speak up. But I would like to start off by thanking Todd Thalman for all the work he's done. All the data collection, putting the plans together, holding the public meetings, and also Brian Scoville was there helping him quite a bit too. So I'd like to thank those two, and then plus all the residents. There were a number of residents that showed up, and so they provided information at the public meeting and then subsequently on emails. So it's been some great communication back and forth. So kind of if we can bring up the laptop. There we go.
And we have received all the emails, we have copies of them here, so, and then we make sure everyone has them. So even if you don't carbon copy all of us, we make sure everybody gets them, so everybody knows the thoughts from the residents. Thank you.
So I'm going to be pretty brief, but as I mentioned, there was a staff meeting or a public meeting in June that was held. The residents who were unable to attend that did receive information via email and provided feedback through that, through the email. And then Todd had developed at each location for traffic calming, developed mostly, it was three options for each site, and then the residents reviewed that and provided their feedback. From those, from that information, staff did develop four total layouts, and so Todd will go through that. The costs are included in the packet, and then kind of the follow-up here. After the design is selected by the Public Works Committee and approved by City Council, we want to move forward with installing those devices. We're hoping to be able to get those in this fall. We are getting kind of late in the process here to be able to get them installed in the fall, just because it's going to take possibly 2 months or so to receive the speed tables. So with that, I'll just let Todd kind of go over the 4 different options.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
And will these appear on the screen for our residents too?
Yes, we can bring those up.
Thank you.
While Brian is doing that, I'll just kind of recap what those 4 alternatives were. We summarized basically the most preferred alternatives, meaning the ones that were indicated by the residents as being their number 1 preferences at each location. Then the moderately preferred were the number 2 vote getters, and then the least preferred were the ones that received the fewest preferences during our public meeting and the subsequent email exchange we had with the residents. As you can see on Exhibit 1, for those of you who have the packet, there we go, that's Exhibit 1. That is the most preferred alternatives by location. The memo that I prepared and sent to Dave as part of your packet summarizes on the first page the table there about what the most preferred alternatives were at each location, as well as the number of preferences that each one received. So that's summarized there for you. As you can see, some of those were fairly close. For example, at 132nd and Pawnee, it was a 1-vote margin between the most preferred and the second most preferred. At option number 2, or location number 2, it was a tie basically for the top preference, and then some of the other ones had a little bit greater separation. So we had a lot of good feedback too. We had, gosh, I don't even remember how many. We had over 45 people, I believe, that sent back some sort of feedback to us in either comments or actual expressing of their preferences. So we had a really good response back from the residents as well, which is much appreciated. But again, back to the exhibit, option number 1, or exhibit number 1 is a summary of the most preferred, and that was basically speed tables at all 5 locations. Those came out at the top of the category for each of the 5 locations. Those are summarized graphically at the bottom of the page for each individual location as well, so you can kind of see the location of where those speed tables were. The second exhibit is the second preferences. Yeah, excuse me. It is the check my exits, the moderately preferred alternatives by location. As you can see on that group, there were some changes there. The mini roundabout came out in the number 2 position at the Pawnee Lane one. And then we had speed feedback signs at location 2. Median islands were at locations 3, 4, and 5. So those were the second most preferred alternatives along the corridor. The third most preferred is what I refer to as least preferred alternatives. These were the ones that received the fewest preferences expressed by the residents that provided their input. And as you can see on that, it's median islands at location number 1, and then it's some variation of chokers along the rest of the corridor. We took a look at that information then and decided that even though speed tables were the number 1 preferred option at each one of the locations, we didn't feel like 5 speed tables along the corridor was an appropriate response to traffic calming. That's a fairly large number of speed tables for this length of a corridor and would be somewhat disruptive, obviously, to calm traffic. You need to introduce some sort of friction to the traffic flow and some sort of discomfort to the driver, but that vertical bump for each one of those locations we felt would be excessive and not as well, excuse me, as well received by the residents. So at location 2 and location 4, we opted to change those out and go with the second most preferred alternatives, which at location 2 was the speed feedback signs, and location 4 was the median islands with a marked crosswalk on the north leg of the intersection. We felt that gives us a good balance along the corridor of the vertical component of a speed table combined with the other elements that residents preferred with the speed feedback signs and with some of the median islands incorporated as well. We did summarize the costs for you on the final exhibit. We looked at the most preferred alternatives. That cost range was between $120,000 and $150,000 if we went with straight top preferences. If we went with the moderately preferred preferences, that was $380,000 to $525,000, and you'll notice that's primarily driven by the mini roundabout cost being added into there. That's $250,000 to $350,000 for that. And then the least preferred alternative was $205,000 to $265,000. The recommended alternatives and the combination that we presented on that recommended alternatives was about $130,000 to $170,000 worth of permanent improvements for the corridor. I think I'll pause at that point and take any questions you might have or any concerns you might have to talk about how we got here, if you have any questions about that in more detail, or talk about the recommended alternatives and where we think we need to go from here.
Right. Go ahead, Jim.
Based on your experience, no matter what alternative you decide, let's just take your recommendation. How much do you think the speed will reduce based on your experience with the suggested speed table?
I would think speed tables at the location of the speed table, there's going to be a fairly significant reduction in speed. Those will probably be down in the 15 to 20 mile per hour range at that location. Obviously, there'll be a slowing as you approach it. There'll be an acceleration as you leave it. So within 200 to 300 feet either side of a speed table, you usually have relatively slow speeds. If we have a good sequence of effective traffic calming devices spaced out, which we do, they're 400 to 600 feet apart along the corridor, that then would dissuade people from accelerating too fast to come to the next traffic calming device, et cetera. So those physical devices should drop us at least 5 miles per hour along the corridor, I would hope. That's our target anyways, to drop it around 5 miles per hour.
Thank you.
Marcia?
I had a question. Let's, I guess, just talk about the recommended alternative. With the islands, with any of these, would it affect taking land from property owners?
The median islands themselves would not, but at location 4, in order to get the crosswalk to work well, and it's kind of hard to see down in the median island drawing. I don't know, Brian, yeah, can you? That's a little fuzzy, but you can see we need to relocate the sidewalk a little bit in order to make it ADA compliant, provide the proper turning space and the proper ADA ramps going both across 132nd Terrace and across High Drive. So there would be a small pedestrian easement that we would need on that sidewalk side of things from the resident in order to make the sidewalk and the crosswalk work in an appropriate location. There's some flexibility there. This is just a first conceptual layout of it, so we can work with that property owner to come up with an amenable solution that we can agree to.
So if you put the island in, you don't have to widen the street?
No, No, that is the point of the island. The street is relatively wide right now. I believe it's 36 feet back to back, if I recall correctly. Putting in the median islands, our goal there is to reduce the through lanes to 10 feet. That helps make drivers feel a little more uncomfortable that the lane is that narrow and there's an impediment on both sides in forms of curb and gutter. And so that would be what helps slow folks down through those locations. That's why we need the median islands to be, more than just 25 or 30 feet long. They need to be 100, 150 feet total length or more in order to create that feeling of discomfort and slow drivers down.
And then the second part would be that I assume that these islands would become part of the HOA's responsibility for maintaining and,
Yeah, that would depend on what happens in the island. If it's just a paver brick type island or some type of a hardscape surface like that, then I'm assuming that the city would maintain it. If it turns into a landscaped island, that would probably be something we would recommend the HOA do if that's what they would want to do with that.
How wide is that island?
I believe it's about 12 feet back of curb to back of curb, 10 to 12 feet, somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't recall the exact dimensions, but it's a fairly wide island.
So 10 to 12, then that would allow, if they wanted, good question, Marcia, that would allow landscaping. We have them with less, probably, with landscaping. So that's a very good question. Thank you
There
for
would
asking
be
that.
some considerations there for the visibility too, especially if we have a pedestrian crosswalk at the end of the median or between medians, then we'd want to make sure that whatever plantings were in there were low enough to maintain visibility of pedestrians in the crosswalk as well. So we want to make sure that we take that into consideration. It's not just wide open that you can landscape it any way you want. There would be some restrictions on what could go in there from a visibility standpoint.
Right.
No, that's width of the island. Yeah. Yeah.
Chuck?
Earlier in the meeting, David commented that we are kind of running out of time. I would be interested in knowing if we would put these things in with 2 months to order, maybe in late September, put these test speed bumps, ramps, whatever, in. When would we take them out? Mid-November then? So we'd only have probably, 60 days to test these things?
That's a fairly accurate assumption, yeah, depending on when we get them. Obviously, we get them out there as quickly as we could based on delivery time, and we'd have to pick them up probably before Thanksgiving. That's weather dependent, and the reason for that is snow plows. They don't work well with the temporary devices. They tend to be in conflict with each other and plow up the temporary device, so we want to make sure that those are removed prior to the first snowfall. So if we have a mild fall and it's not appearing that there's going to be any snowfall, before Thanksgiving, we could leave them out as long as necessary and just keep an eye on a weather forecast, and when it's forecasting a snow event.
Following
then
up on that point, the permanent ones would be concrete.
They would be asphalt, but they would
Asphalt?
be, yeah, they would be just like the rest of the street. They'd be an asphalt
Okay, so
speed
are the
table.
ones on 85th Terrace, are they asphalt or concrete?
I think there's some, are they concrete? I was
Those
thinking
are
of some of both.
concrete.
Okay.
Yeah,
Those were the first and only ones we built.
Okay. The other question I had is, we've got 5 possible locations for something along here. Is there any other street in the metropolitan area that has that many speed control devices in that length of time? This looks like this is really a lot in a short distance. Is there any other place in town, in Kansas City or Lee Summit or Raytown or Overland Park, with this many speed devices in that short of a length of street?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Up to the mic, so folks online can hear you.
Mark Davidson, sorry, Mark Davidson. I live on 3400 West 132nd. If you go between the Lowe's and the Walmart, there's a mini traffic circle there with stop signs, which I understand are illegal. And I think there are 4 speed bumps going to 135th, and then I think there might be one going north as well.
There's a roundabout.
Yeah, there's another roundabout. So there's quite a few just in that section from Blue Ridge Boulevard going straight south, and then it curves and goes over. So there's quite a bit there.
Okay. Thank you. That's Normandy, I think, in there, isn't it? Newcastle. Okay.
So Chuck, Chuck, to follow up a little bit on that, so when we look at 85th Terrace, the length of 85th Terrace is about 1,600 feet, and we have 3 devices out there. And so this street is 3/4 of a mile, so it's over 5,000 feet. So it's 3 times the distance or the length that 85th Terrace is. So
So
it
this
may
is-
look like there's a lot, but really, these are spaced out right around 600 to 700 feet. So there's,
This is
still-
less concentrated than 85th Terrace, is what you're saying?
correct.
Okay, thank you. He says it's less.
So will the speed feedback signs stay up even after Thanksgiving? There's no reason for that to come down, is there?
That's correct. The only thing we would plan to remove over the winter would be the speed tables themselves because of the snow plowing issues, but the other devices could stay up. The median islands at 132nd Terrace, as well as the speed feedback signs, could remain in place.
So those median islands, that's a temporary measure as well, somehow?
Yeah, we have, they're temporary traffic cones, basically, that you put out. They're basically tubular markers. They're about 24 inches tall, and we just nail them down on the asphalt, so we can lay out those medians with those tubular markers so that they function as an island without actually having to put the curb and gutter and the island in.
I see. So that's going to be a lot of those things if there's 3 median tables and it's going to outline,
Yeah, we'll put the tubular markers in at about every 25 feet or so, roughly the same as the speed limit on the street. And so we did a quick estimate, it'd be about 30 tubular markers to lay out those medians at 132nd and High, 132nd Terrace on High Drive.
we have 4 residents at least that, well, Gareth and Adam may want to speak as well. Do we have any other immediate questions, or, Marcia, go ahead.
The speed feedback sign, that's just the sign that has the lights around it that would flash to show
Yeah.
where your speed is.
Yes, that would be just a speed limit sign, basically. It's a radar-indicated device.
When I was in Denver last summer, their speed feedback signs were really neat because if you went over, they flashed red. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's red, I need to slow down. The ones that they put up are good and I like them, but they're white, so they're not as,
Well, the sign would need to be white, but the LED letters that give you the feedback are typically in a yellow type color, and there are some available that
well, I'm talking
switch to
about
red.
the little lights that go around that blink.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot of different varieties of these, and I'm not sure
I was
which
just
ones
gonna
we've
say that
spec'd.
those were very effective. I
Yeah.
thought the red, because
Okay.
you're like, oh my gosh, it's red, what am I doing?
Yeah,
Right.
the ones we purchase, you can change the colors and you can put messages on it to like slow down or something like that, or you can just flash. Typically what we're doing is we're just flashing the actual speed of the driver or the vehicle.
Well, I think if you have that sign, and I think they can be effective, but I'd like to see them a little more effective.
Yeah, we can maximize that visibility of those too.
Yeah, the visibility, yeah.
Want to be a little careful with flashing lights because at nighttime, that can be somewhat annoying to have too much brightness flashing in a neighborhood too. So we'll make sure we get the proper lighting levels on those signs so they're
But you're only
dimmed
gonna-
down at dark.
Your recommendation is only one.
It'd be one each direction, so there would be 2 physical signs, but it would be just in that stretch of item or location number 2. Yeah, one for each direction.
Okay, in order as they have signed in, Jeff Logan? Unless you don't want this order, this is pretty informal here.
Hi, Jeff Logan, 13220 High Drive. So if you could zoom in on 4, that's me. So I'm the one whose yard apparently gets to get taken. Yeah, it's me right there, yeah. So the street's 36 feet. We're trying to understand how wide the actual island is.
I think you said 10 to 12 feet, but. the
So that
width-
leaves 12-foot lanes then, simple math, right?
Well, yeah, the lane
Goal is 10-foot lanes, so that would make, if the street's 36, right?
You have to consider, it depends on where you measure, like back to curb and the gutter and the concrete roof for 10-foot asphalt, plus you have the curb and gutter, so it's just depends on where you measure.
So that would eliminate street parking for me, correct? Yeah. Yeah, which is where I live. The other piece is, the problem at that intersection is primarily 132nd Terrace. There's a yield sign when you hit High. So again, I live on that corner, so I see it all day. And I understand the recommendation says that going this route will slow that down potentially. To me, it makes a lot of sense to have a stop sign at the end of 132nd Terrace and not a yield sign. Because that's where you get people flying around that corner, not looking, and you've got traffic, as you've seen in your walks, fly in both directions. So while I realize the residents voted for a speed table there, and we're saying this, it's the second option, you know, we're looking at the second options. The only reason that's the second option at my location is because we only had 2 options. So I would ask that you take into consideration the residents' feedback on that, because I think putting a 12-foot median in front of my house and reshaping my yard with the sidewalk, that doesn't feel appropriate, at least in my case. So, thank you. I appreciate you all.
Well, it wouldn't be just his yard if there's 3 tables. It would be anybody in that stretch would.
on the sidewalk. That's my sidewalk that's gonna have to be reclaimed.
Yeah. Yeah. You the White House or you the reverse?
That one, yeah.
It's the your White House. Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly which house it is.
So, and with respect to the impacts to the yard there, we would obviously try to minimize how much we extend the sidewalk into the yard, and it would require a sidewalk easement. Typically, we'll get a triangular type shape easement we'll request from the property owner. And so I guess the point is there that the sidewalk would have to shift, and it's likely going to shift about the width of the existing sidewalk, or possibly even a little more. So between 6 and 8 feet to the kind of west 130 or north of 132nd Terrace.
So closer to his home, clearly.
Closer to his home. Yes,
Clearly.
it would definitely extend into his yard and lawn area.
Speaking of sidewalks, who's doing all the work on the sidewalks? There's 2 stretches, 3 stretches yesterday. Is that us or is that the residents? Public Works. That's Public Works? Yeah, I noticed, 2 or 3 stretches, 2 for sure, 3 maybe stretches of new sidewalk along there. So that's us, not the residents. So, Mr. Logan, is that your comment for this morning, for the moment?
It is, yeah.
Okay, Tom Schweitzer?
Tom Schweitzer, 13209 High Drive. First off, I do want to thank Public Works for taking care of our sidewalks. It's at every sewer location throughout the subdivision, and quite an undertaking. I'm at option 4, across from Mr. Logan. And my initial thought was the median islands. If you look at my house, right there, in either direction, I have no on-street parking for probably 50 to 100 feet in either direction. Driveway's small. I can barely fit 2 cars, but that's potentially my problem. I do utilize the on-street parking during the day. So for my input, I don't think the median's a good location there. I do agree with Jeff, though. That sign, and it blows my mind, while it's not a stop sign coming down 132nd Terrace, it is a no-brainer to put a stop sign in there. I know it doesn't meet the criteria, but a criteria doesn't fit for every situation. It's a yield sign, it definitely needs to be a stop sign. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry Gunja.
Good morning. I'm Larry Gunja, 13288 High Drive. I live in Section 5, second house in off of 133rd Street. I was wondering if it would be possible to run another traffic study, because I'm second house in, we've got 132nd Street and 133rd Street closed. I can't get out of my driveway sometimes because there's 5 or 6 cars backed up from the intersection of High Drive and 133rd. Something that I think should have been addressed in this and hasn't been is what's going to happen at the intersection of 133rd Street and High Drive. There's going to be almost 1,000 apartment units going in there. There's going to be probably a car and a half per unit, so 1,500 cars a day going to be using. Well, they won't all be using, but any one of you can come sit on my porch with me, and we'll watch the cars, and we'll watch them back up in front of my house. And if the plan future down the road is to put a stop sign or stop light there, that'll continue to back up. My suggestion would be to put a roundabout at 133rd and High Drive to keep the flow of traffic going instead of stopping and waiting for cross traffic. Just a suggestion, but it hasn't even been addressed. That intersection, which is, I guess, going from 1 to 5, is at the end, the very end of the plan. So I guess that's just it. I think something at that intersection needs to be addressed. And I think now we're going to get a little bit of a better idea when the development goes or is completed. I think we should do a traffic count now, because I'm not just making up these numbers about cars backing up past my driveway. It would be closer to what's going to happen when we get all the apartments in over there. So that's all I got.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I think the other part of that equation too is the sight distance is terrible at that intersection too. I live in Waterford around the corner, so I travel through there.
Looking east is what's bad. You can't see people coming up the hill as you,
You can't see them west either, because it curves like this. It curves both ways.
And Mark Davidson, do you have further comment? And again, you'll be able to come and speak. We've got till 9 o'clock, so if,
Oh, okay. Well, no, I just wanted to publicly thank Todd and Brian and their team. And I think this has been a challenging process, and he's managed it very well professionally. I think at some point we need to defer to his experience. I mean, Todd has what, 35, maybe 40 years of traffic experience. So
we stopped counting,
I
didn't we?
understand the concern.
We don't
We're all
talk
gonna
about
have
that anymore.
concerns. I mean, I would prefer median islands and speed tables. It sounds like you would rather have speed table. I understand you don't want to lose some of your yard. I get all of that, but at the end of the day, I would just ask the committee to consider what's best for the entire community and what's best for the city of Leawood and what do we want to be known for on that street. And trust the opinion and the recommendation from all that experience that Todd and his team and Brian as well leading that process, because I think that's what's really important. And I do think whatever we do is going to help the situation, because it's very challenging. I mean,
Especially now with the roads closed.
right, yeah, and I ride my bike and walk through there all the time. I worry all the time when I get to their intersection. If I see a car, I know they're not going to see me and they're not going to slow down, and I just have to wait. I would prefer to have a stop sign. So I think we just need to let the process work itself out. So I would recommend to the committee that you vote to approve this and take it in front of the governing body in a month.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Chris?
Yeah, I just want, Todd, Scott, can you guys address, I think there's a few questions I've heard. One is about the number of devices that are going in. One is this parking issue with the median islands, and one is why we can't do a stop sign at that. Can you guys just address that for everyone's edification?
Sure. I will start, I guess, in the order that I heard the questions, if that's okay, and let me know if I miss one of these for you. But the stop sign location, we did take a look at sight distances. We did not check it in the field yet, which we certainly can do, but we did look at the sight distances on 132nd Terrace, and it does seem to have adequate sight distance for a yield sign at 25 miles per hour. What we need to look at is the sight distance for a little higher speeds at 30 miles per hour and see if there's sight distance out there for a yield sign. It may need to be switched to a stop sign, but we just haven't had the time to get through all of that with working through the traffic calming issues and making sure that's on the table. So we'll take a closer look at that and see if a stop sign is warranted at that location. Right now, the yield sign is highly visible. It appears there's adequate sight distance based on calculations, and there have been no accidents reported to the PD at that location over the last several years. So it hasn't been a major crash incident location, but that doesn't mean it doesn't feel unsafe at times with near misses and those kind of things.
That seems so unlogical to me, so I'm glad we can do that. And how long might that take? And then that would be just if again, it was warranted and we can justify it, that would be something that would go in relatively quickly and it would stay there, right?
In a lot of ways, that's separate completely from the traffic calming element.
Right.
Honestly, I would prefer to wait to switch the yield sign out until we have the median islands in place and see if that mitigates the problem of people flying down there and making that high-speed left or the high-speed right, because there will be an impediment to that. They won't have the entire width of the roadway to make that turn happen. There is also a risk that if people are ignoring a yield sign, they're probably not going to pay attention to a stop sign either, and signs are a device that is used to establish right-of-way at an intersection, but it doesn't force compliance. That's a voluntary thing from the driver's perspective to do. So simply switching it to a stop sign could help, but there's no guarantee that that would change driver behavior completely.
But I do think you've got community support for that, and, you know, most people don't want a stop sign unnecessarily. And at very least, sounds like the yield sign's not very effective. Possibly a stop sign would result in a yield, right? At least they would slow down.
It could.
So,
That's a T street. You have to, I mean, you can't fly through there, because I take that a lot too. It's a T street, so you have to either slow down to a crawl and look before you turn, or stop. I mean, it's a little different. That intersection's a little, I don't know how people are speeding through there without slowing down. I mean, I go through there, and I have to slow down, and I usually almost stop.
They do slow down to a degree, but you've got landscaping with trees overgrown. A lot of times you can't see the cars coming northbound. And if, Tom Schweitzer, 13209 High Drive. But with the higher speeds, yes, increases the awareness. The other factor is the kids on their scooters coming down, and
They're everywhere.
I don't think they're gonna stop, but it's a dangerous intersection. And I live right there. I see it 5 times a week. And that's the limited time I'm out there.
We also have Gareth Matthews and Adam Brawl. Gareth, I see you're on mute. Would you like an opportunity to speak?
Yes, that's great. Thank you. Just carrying that stop sign, yield sign thing, I am somewhat optimistic that the proposed medians will help, or islands will help with that turn. I actually recorded a pickup truck pulling right out in front of me, and I think it was Sunday or Monday, and you know, had to come to a stop, and he did yield. He just didn't stop, and so decided, for whatever reason, he was distracted, thought he had looked left in time, then looked right, pulled out. So this does happen a lot. I am hopeful that, as Todd said, that making a turn that doesn't allow them to cut off large sections of High Drive, but in fact have to loop around, will slow them down and make them more cautious. I want to second one of the things that folks said about what Public Works is doing in terms of the sidewalk work. It's phenomenal. I actually just took a look at it. I can't believe how level it is. Really impressed by the work. I do have a question. One just occurred to me when folks, I'm also going to lose my street parking. And all other things being equal, I'd prefer not to, but I understand that that's the price to be paid for what we're trying to do. Given how wide these are, and I admit I've never seen something like this, but I don't know why it wouldn't be feasible. Is there not a way to put a parking in the median, in the island itself? So hardscape the front end of it, but carve out space on each side for cars that might want to park. I see that happening in cities, big cities, where it's painted and cars will park in the painted section. It would still provide the same smaller corridor, but it would allow folks like Jeff and Tom to have, and myself, a place for cars to pull in and park in the median as opposed to on the sidewalk. So I'm just asking, as an idea, is that something that could help resolve that issue for folks who would otherwise be losing on-street parking. The other thing I wanted to ask, and this goes back to the East Village conversation. So originally, the developer, I thought, had agreed to do a $200,000 letter of credit that we could put down for the costs. And then when that became an issue, there was a discussion about whether the city should agree to, I think it was $30,000 or $35,000. And in the course of that discussion, the $30,000 or $35,000 was said to be the estimated cost of 7 or so speed bumps along High Drive and 132nd Street. And so just quick back of the envelope math, that's like $4,000 to $5,000 per speed table. Sorry, it wasn't speed bumps, it was speed tables. They were also, I believe, at that time discussing asphalt. And I think I picked up correctly that we're still discussing asphalt as opposed to concrete. I guess what I'm just curious about is the estimates for the speed tables now are 20 to 25,000 per speed table. And that's a factor of 400 or 500% higher. And I'm just curious, because ultimately we are going to have to, figure out how to pay for this. I'm just curious what accounts for that pretty substantial difference in cost between the speed tables that were being discussed, a year and a half ago at the at East Village and the ones that we're discussing now. I guess the last thing I'd like to say is I do appreciate the amount of effort that goes into this, and it is very helpful to visually see these items. One thing as I looked at Area 4, which is up on the screen now, is it looks like the median partly cuts off Tom's driveway just a little bit. And I'm wondering if things like that have been drawn to scale, or if those are just, I guess, placeholders, and that at the time that the installation takes place, that issues like that will be able to be adjusted. Now, truthfully, I don't know if Tom actually needs to worry about that as he comes out of his driveway, if he's taking a right-hand turn, if he can get around that or not. But that just is another question that I have. So that's it. I guess the question is cost on the speed tables. What's the difference, a year later? And I guess I forgot my other one.
Well, you'll have another opportunity, Gareth. Let's address these comments.
So, yeah, the two comments that I heard was, one is on the cost. The cost that we were talking about last year was having our public works crews go out and install these speed tables. There's not a lot of asphalt or material that's necessary for it. We just mill off 2 inches, and they're only 4 to 6 inches in height. So we're not having to bring a lot of material in, but it takes a lot of labor to get that built it right. And so that's the cost that we used, is what it would be to hire a contractor to go out there and do the work. So if the city were to do it, we have a milling machine, we have the paver, we have the crews, we haul the asphalt off. It's all we're doing is having to pay to bring the material in. And so we estimated the cost, went back and double checked it, and it's significantly cheaper if staff does it and utilizes our own equipment and labor.
And both options were temporary.
No, well, that was going to be permanent. If we did it with we can do it with our crews, but the estimate that Todd put together, this is using a contractor to do all the work. So we would bid the project out with another, if this moves forward and we end up putting permanent devices in, we would bid the project out and get a contractor to come in and install these devices.
Oh, now you're confusing me. So I thought all this was temporary.
Well, these are temporary. I'm talking about the whole difference in cost. That's what the question is from Gareth, was a question about, really, that's not going to occur till next year. But the costs that we put together are to hire a contractor to put these permanent devices up. Now, to do temporary devices, it's about $80,000 to $90,000. I don't remember the exact number, but those would be rubber speed tables. And then, of course, we say they're temporary, but the speed signs, the radar feedback, those are somewhat permanent, because once we purchase them, we just use them at this location. And then
So these are the costs for the permanent,
Yes.
not the temp?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's...
Yeah, to purchase a temporary speed table is right around $20,000 for each one. So And then
Okay.
a second question about the driveways. Yeah, this is just a 50,000 view. So once whatever we move forward with, we would go out in the field and stake. So if we do islands, we're going to make sure that there's room for each person to access their property from both directions. So that island, the one island that's kind of shown blocking a driveway, that would be probably half the size that it's actually shown
Right.
on this plan.
That was mine, I missed
And I'm
that
sorry,
one
just
on
to,
drafting.
just to follow up, I do remember the other question. It was the ability to park cars within the median. And then just a follow-up question, what changes between what the city was willing to do in terms of creating speed tables with its own labor? If we get to a point where the budget's the issue, is it still possible to have the city come back and do the speed tables and then contract out the rest of the stuff as a way to save money on cost for this project?
On the parking, that would be challenging to have, because these are pretty narrow, even though we said they're 10 feet or so wide. But to get in there, you're only in a 10-foot lane. And if you're trying to turn your car to pull in, you're going to swing out further. You could be starting to farm yards. We would not be able to plow in the wintertime when there's snow. We would not be able to get in within that short median with our snow plows. It'd be pretty challenging to create the parking spots. So I don't know if Todd may have a better idea on that, but.
Well, I was gonna say, additionally, if we create parking in that median location, it would have to be a flush median so that people could drive up onto that. The whole point of the raised median is to create that tighter feeling for drivers going through there. Paint doesn't do that. If we simply stripe out a 10-foot lane, it's gonna be very ineffective because you don't feel like you're in a narrower lane. Yeah, there's a stripe there, but so what? You drive over the stripe, it's no big deal. That median is there as a physical presence, and that's the key to traffic calming, is you have to have some physical element to deter drivers from going 30 miles per hour. They have to feel uncomfortable going 30 to make them want to reduce their speed. That's why speed tables are effective. They force you to slow down. You don't have a choice. You can go over it at 30 if you want, but you won't probably do that twice. Same thing with these median islands or chokers. When we were looking at those, we went to the 10-foot lane because it's got to feel uncomfortable to go through it at 30 and make you want to slow down. And that just simply doesn't happen with striping.
Thank you. Adam Brawl?
No, there's one other question.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
So he also asked if staff could build these speed tables whenever we get to the permanent devices. And we're not opposed to doing that with our crews. It's just we were trying to compare each one of these costs to each other, so we just used a contractor.
So it was an apples to apples at this point.
You're right.
Thank you. Adam Brawl?
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Adam Brawl, 13213 High Drive. Guess what? I'm at spot number 4. I'm really proud to say that my corner of the corridor is very well represented here today and has been, I think, over a lot of the discussion. So good job, neighbors. So let me see if I can, I'm probably not going to say anything new. Everybody did a really good job of laying out a lot of the basic concerns. My first one that maybe is just recently getting talked about is the cost. Todd has done and continues to do a fantastic job of laying out all the minutia of this and how it could and would and should go. It looks like in the memo that Todd put out, the estimate of the temporary materials is $90,000. If I recall correctly, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong after I'm done talking, I think what we have secured from the developer is a $100,000 grant. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, that he is going to pay as a result of the project across the street going to go in and adding to the traffic here, right? My concern comes in what that $100,000 is going to go to. Is it going to be something that we assume that money, whatever the amount is, the money that he's going to be putting up, is that going to go towards the entire project, meaning that these temporary items end up becoming what is drawn upon from what he puts up? Because at a certain point, it sounds like we're going to be looking to figure out how we pay for everything else outside of what the provider or what the developer puts up, right? Obviously, nobody on the street is going to want to pay any money to add these traffic calming devices or do anything really as a result of the project that is being put in across the street from us. I probably don't need to tread over burnt ground already, but very few people in this corridor, in this neighborhood, want the project to go in across the street from us. So this is really kind of being put upon us. So we don't want to have to incur additional traffic and pay for our streets to be safer as a result of this additional traffic. That I think everybody can understand how that seems a little unfair and a little inappropriate, but I know the city probably doesn't want to put it in their budget to pay for this stuff as well. So that's going to be something that will be closely monitored and we'll need to really kind of dig into as we kind of go forward here. The other things I will say, I will echo everybody's sentiments that the city is doing a great job of keeping us engaged. Todd and his team, Brian, are doing a really good job of keeping us informed and really kind of, again, putting out all the rationale as to what these decisions are. So I guess I would say, please continue to do that. I think you can see we as a community and just this corridor itself are trying to be as engaged as we possibly can. I know I've become incredibly involved in trying to understand all the ins and outs of all this stuff. And it's very complex and can get very confusing. But again, we really appreciate guys like Todd who do have really good experience and are doing a very good job of articulating all the details of this. I guess I would say I don't want this to become a black and white issue where it's either we do 3 speed tables and a median, a couple medians, or nothing. I guess I would encourage the committee to continue to be patient with us as homeowners that we're trying to learn and understand all this stuff. The devil's going to be in the details on all these things. You can see we're pouring over details over sizes, medians, landscaping, and all this fun stuff. I think we're going to obviously need to go back and forth on a lot of these things. But we're going to do everything that we can as members of the community to stay engaged and make sure that you know what our wishes are. But everybody's going to get a little bit more hair raised once you start to talk about what's going on in each one of their streets, right? And in front of their houses. Tommy and Jeff's arguments are very sound. I have a concern over parking as well. But more than anything, I just want to see something get done on this street because the speed is one thing. Things that I'm noticing more and more. Tommy and I have talked about this a lot. That kids riding around on their scooters to get around these neighborhoods to get to the country club is becoming a bit of a problem. And so that is something that I want to make sure is kind of considered with all this as well. But I like the fact that we're going to try and be doing something, especially around speed tables and things that will make people at least focus, because it's speed is one thing, but focus is another. Everybody's got their phone out nowadays. Everybody's trying to send texts and emails and phone calls and look at pictures while they're driving for some odd reason. And I think these types of measures help mitigate that. Obviously, it's not going to guarantee it, but I think that'll do well. So I would like to see, again, something done, whether it's even if it's 2 speed tables along the entire corridor is all we get done. Something small like that as compared to this current plan, I still think is a win. So although I would like to see, an approval by the committee here today to send this to the city council, I don't want it to be either approval or denial and then nothing done, right? Lastly, I will continue to beat the drum, and Todd will probably need to talk about this later, but yeah, that yield sign at 132nd and High Drive is a problem. I understand your comments and the rationale that changing a yield sign to a stop sign is not forcing somebody to stop, but at the same time, in my opinion, it helps. A stop sign is better than a yield sign. I also will say, and Gareth shared with me the video that he captured the other day of the truck on 132nd turning left onto High Drive, just completely ignoring it. What I think one of the big problems is that when people get to that yield sign, they don't understand that cross traffic does not stop. And I know we see signs all over the place that says cross traffic does not stop. I wonder if something as simple as that might help. Look, overall, I don't see that there's a big issue in changing a stop sign or yield sign to a stop sign. If you guys want to put the stop sign on my front desk, I can get a ratchet and get out there and do it myself. I can make that change. Obviously, you're not going to let me do that, but nonetheless, it should be pretty simple, right? I see a lot of cars speed through there. Tommy and I have sat on his driveway and had a beer a few nights and just watched cars blast through there. It gets a lot worse at night when you get people that are speeding home or kids driving around. So with all due respect of the person that said that they come to a nice slow stop and look both ways and everything, I think you're the exception, right? I think most people blow through there because they're cutting through the neighborhood, or they're trying to avoid traffic or whatever. So we do see a lot of problems with people blowing through that yield sign. I think a stop sign is an easy change to make, even if it doesn't guarantee that people are following the rules. I would still like to do as much as we possibly can, and I think switching out the signs would be nice and easy. I'm good. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I know, yes. Jim, we'll start here. I know everybody has something to say, I think.
To me, putting in a stop sign is a no-brainer right now. I think we ought to do that. That they're at 132nd Terrace and start analyzing the driver behavior. And the second thing is on the section, on intersection number 4, could you pull that up? The sidewalk issue. I know at 93rd and Lee Boulevard, we have a signal, or have a crosswalk that crosses Lee Boulevard, but then you have to, I can't remember, turn right or left to cross the street. So can you consider not moving that sidewalk and leave the sidewalk where it is, and then you just turn left a little bit to go to the crosswalk and then walk and leave that sidewalk alone?
Well, we're required to meet ADA, American Disabilities Act. So there's minimum grades you have to match, and then you have to have minimum or maximum transitions you can have getting to the roadway. So it's very challenging on these geometric. The difference on the 93rd and Lee, that intersection, we have a whole lot of right-of-way out there. And so we're able to get everything. I mean, I think we have like about 30 to 40 feet from off the roadway in right-of-way. So that's why we were able to do that work on Lee Boulevard. But, you know, we can look at this intersection. There's other things we can do, but we do have to meet, we can't install a crossing that doesn't meet ADA. So we can look at this closer and try to come up with some alternatives. But
So ADA would not allow a left-hand walk?
it's when you get to your ramps, you have to, so when you make turns, you have to have maximum grades on that landing. So it's very challenging.
I understand that,
To
yeah.
say that, just based on grades, but we can look at that. Plus the other thing is you can't even move the sidewalk without getting an easement from the property owner, because it's already 1 foot off the right of way. So even to just replace it, I mean, you're getting almost where you need an easement to
Yeah,
do
I understand that.
work,
I'm
so.
just trying to maybe minimize the disruption of the
Yeah,
sidewalk.
this is just a real high-level view,
Okay.
so we haven't gone out and surveyed it, and we would, we want to minimize it as much as possible also. We don't want to be putting sidewalks in people's properties, we want to limit that as much as possible.
Thank you.
Chuck?
Thank you. I had 2 points. One of the neighbors made the comment about the visibility at 132nd Terrace and High Drive. If you're getting onto High Drive, I ride my bike through there, and the visibility, because of the foliage on the trees, I think is a question. And I think there's a ordinance or a guideline in the city that street trees have to be trimmed up to a certain level, so you can see the intersection, you can see the traffic coming both ways. I would like Public Works to just look at that intersection where we're considering a stop sign, and I agree with Mr. Rawlings that a stop sign is probably a no-brainer there. But look at the visibility right and left as you are on 132nd Terrace to make sure that the visibility is meeting our standards. I think that's an important thing. The other thing is, when you pinch down because of a center island, are we obligated, because that's a public street, to provide on-street parking? I'm thinking of UPS and FedEx trucks and home improvement people, and so we don't have to provide a certain length of street where they can park their trucks to make deliveries, the FedEx and the so forth?
We are not required. We have
Okay.
other locations in the city that it's similar to this, where it's 1 lane, 11 feet, and then there's a median for a substantial length.
So
where
would there be a
people-
no parking sign there on
Yeah,
the?
there'd have to be no parking signs put up in that area.
Okay, all right, so there's not an obligation on our part to have public parking on the street?
No, but we do want resident buy-in, so.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody's gonna have a get-together at their house, you don't want everybody parking, 100 or 200 feet down the street, but I guess they're gonna be obligated to do that. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Marcia?
So I need a little clarification. Going back to these islands, 'cause I heard a comment that they would be temporary, they would be picked up so that the snow removal vehicles can get through in the winter.
The islands would stay. So the temporary islands with the bollards, those would stay over winter. The speed table, or the speed tables would be removed, but the radar feedback sign would also stay. So the only devices.
My question was gonna be, if you put permanent islands in there, are the emergency vehicles and the snow vehicles gonna be able to get through?
Yeah, we could get through, yes. There's,
So I have to say that kind of after this discussion, kind of where I'm leaning is to the number one, the most desired recommendation by the residents with the speed tables. Because it seems like we're just creating a lot of issues with these medians. The medians would be nice, I guess, but it seems like we're adding more issues where if we do the speed tables, we're really not altering anybody's yard, no problem with on-street parking, no problem pulling in and out of driveways. Am I missing something here?
no, I mean, just, but from what we've heard publicly is that the residents didn't want just a whole line of speed tables along the street.
Their number one request.
But when we do, right, so, but what they're saying publicly, at least in past meetings, prior meetings, is that they didn't want the speed tables, because that's what Scott Lambert had initially offered up, was to purchase several speed tables, and the residents wanted to consider other options. And so, yeah, I mean, it does appear that they all want speed tables at every location, but those were part of the, when we looked at the voting, it was looking at each area individually, and it didn't look at the entire length of the corridor and showing a corridor that had 5 speed tables. That may not have been, if we'd have showed them that and just said, okay, here's one option, speed tables along the entire corridor, they may not have liked that one. But that's kind of, we could get in, if we started coming in with all these different options, you get into, I mean, there could be 10 to 20 different layouts. And so we were just trying to show specifically each intersection.
I've probably had as much feedback from residents along there that say they don't want any speed tables, and I've had as many say that they want nothing but speed tables. So there's a controversy, I don't want to even call it, that's not fair. There's a difference of opinion in what people want to see along the corridor, and we're trying to find that balance point by not putting in 5 speed tables, even though that was the number one preference. We've heard enough from residents to say they don't want any speed tables to know that 5 is probably going to be very wildly unpopular. We tried to balance that out with other elements, and those other elements do cause parking issues, I understand that, but so do speed tables. They're just a smaller element of it. At the speed table, you're going to lose parking in that immediate vicinity as well, because there's just no place to put a car on a speed table. So there is going to be an impact, although it's very minor, to parking with the speed tables as well. And we just wanted to make sure that we weren't forcing people to drive over 2 or 3 speed tables to get in and out of their neighborhood. The way we've got them situated, you may have to go over 2, but, unless you're going from the west end of the corridor all the way to the east, you're not going to go over 3 speed tables or vice versa. So we tried to balance that out and do other things besides just speed table to try to help balance everybody's opinion in the corridor.
Yes, Chris, want to ask your question, then this gentleman can speak while he's coming up. Go.
Come on up. First, Todd, I want to thank you, because clearly what you just said, I know there's a lot of different opinions. Some people really hate things. And everything I keep hearing is you guys are doing a fantastic job in interfacing with the community and working through this, because I know this is, difficult. But on this idea of all speed tables or splitting it out, I partially agree with Marcia that this is, in some ways, that's what I'm hearing, and maybe not, people don't want 5 speed tables, but maybe only speed tables may be an end result. But I actually like the idea of having multiple things on the temporary side of it. So people, when we're doing this temporarily, the community gets to go, okay, well, that's how that works. And you can decide, well, gosh, does it really impact your ability to pull in and out of your driveway or whatever? You're talking a couple months that you endure it, and if it's intolerable, then the feedback comes of, we're definitely not doing this permanently. So I actually kind of like the idea of having, for the temporary solution, to have multiple different options. People get to experience, live through it for a couple months, and then have that conversation for the permit. Even though what I'm hearing, it sounds like speed tables may be the ultimate thing that only think people tolerate, but anyway.
I'm Doug Houston, 3413 West 132nd Street. A couple
That's this
things.
memo.
One,
Yeah.
on, you have my email?
I do.
Yes.
Thank you. One, I think the 5 locations are too many anyway, to what Mr. Sipple alluded to. I think the speed tables are, incredibly annoying. 5 of them, would turn the entire corridor into 15 miles an hour, which certainly would bring the speeds down, but it would be incredibly annoying to live on that every day. Minimizing them is certainly an option. I'm somewhat in favor of. I think that the overall 5 spots and what's suggested is still a lot of overkill. I'm in total agreement with these gentlemen back here on those islands. I would hate them if I lived there, and they're completely annoying. Removing the yield sign was on my list too. It makes total sense. When I was in high school, yield signs were called looking books, right? Zip through them, all right, and it's on a curve. It's dangerous. I think that would solve a big factor there. There also, one that's never been addressed that I don't understand why is, the most dangerous spot on that whole street is the curve at 132nd and High Drive. All right, I think the only wreck that's been on this streets we're talking about in the 30 years I've lived there was right there on that curve, and and it was a bad wreck. Somebody came around and smashed into a car. It could have been a kid. I don't understand why we also don't look simply at a 3-way stop at High Drive and 132nd. It would slow traffic down coming down the hill on 132nd, all right, eliminating the need for three traffic calming devices from all through Waterford, all right, because you could maybe put one at the top, like, with the flashing, proven that they work, the slow down flashing signs, they do prove they work. That's why they're being suggested. They would slow them down as they come down the hill. They would slow down because they have a stop sign now at the 3-way stop. It would slow down people coming north on High Drive around that curve, all right, so that it would slow them down there. And then if you then, and like I say, I hate speed tables, but I think I kind of agree with Todd's suggestion for a speed table on number 5, because to his reasons, it kind of slows you down right as you get in, as you turn onto High Drive, it immediately slows you down, okay? So right then you got that accomplished, all right? Secondly, you've eliminated the yield sign on the 132nd Terrace, so that now you've eliminated that part of it. Then you have a stop sign, okay? So now in that section, all right, you still have 3 things that you've done. 2 of them will cost you about $2,000, right? Like you said, you'll just have to put up a stop sign, change out a yield sign, and then maybe the 1 speed bump. And again, when you come down from Waterford, the momentum is downhill on Waterford, right? All right, and people kind of go slow through the pool. They go slow because there's a lot of traffic when school lets out. Then the downhill momentum starts, right? So if you have that flashing sign that warns them, to slow down, and then they have a stop sign ahead so they cannot continue to speed, that's going to be another incentive to slow down. And that, based on what I sent you, will end up bringing your cost down to about $61,000, all right? It would bring costs down dramatically, which we still have to pass through the city council. And if it doesn't work, you still can do other things. And now you've avoided their issues. You've avoided the issues of speed bumps, which, by the way, even though speed bumps are the number one choice, they're the number one choice barely, all right? There's hardly a consensus on speed bumps, all right? I mean, one of them, speed bumps were voted on 4 of the places, number one, and tied with the flashing sign on one of the spots. But if you look at the numbers all the way through this voting process, the percentages are not dramatically high towards speed bumps. So which means you're gonna have another uproar with speed bumps once, because the people that haven't voted don't even know about it, let alone when you start getting all the neighboring traffic that has to use the collector streets, all right, you know, then they're gonna start having the annoyance of everything going on. But we can still solve the problem, okay? I mean, 2 stop signs, maybe 1 speed bump, and a flashing slow down sign, you know, the combination of all those is still giving you 4, not 5, it gives you 4, all right? And you will, I think that'll be enough. And if it isn't, then you still have the option of doing something even more dramatic, like what they don't want, but you could look at it later. So those are my thoughts and suggestions. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, the word, or it's come up multiple times today about cost. And I think that's a valid comment. Because at first, I remember sitting here, of course, Mr. Matthews brought up the 200, which turned into 35, which turned into 100, which was all true. And then I had heard it years ago saying that the homeowners were not going to bear the responsibility of the cost, but then we have a traffic calming policy, so it gets muddled. And I would like to know, because I think it's a very valid comment, whether or not we do A, B, C, this attempt, then it's permanent, who's going to pay for it? Is it going to be the homeowners? I think that's the first thing that is one of the first things that needs to be established.
Well, I think, as you know, it's up to the governing body on the cost. We make recommendations, but it's ultimately up to the governing body.
Right.
Scott Lambers mentioned several times that
Right.
the city was going to purchase these temporary devices. So just from staff's recommendation, that's totally separate from the permanent install, and the city's gonna pay for that. That would be my recommendation. Then as far as, you know, whatever device we come up with, or whatever devices, I mean, yeah, what Mr. Houston was saying there towards the end does have some validity to it. We could put maybe 3 of these devices out there and just continue to monitor these, because we do know, at least my thought was, we were gonna continue this studying through next year even. And so
Right.
we can put a few devices out there, see what happens out with the speeds, with the volumes. Of course, it's gonna be difficult to estimate on the volumes because of Mission Road opening back up, but we'll at least be able to determine what the impacts are to the speed. And then we can, you know, we're hearing from the residents on number 4, they don't like it, so we just need to go back, you know, look at some other options at number 4 would be my thought.
And
But to kind of move, but to kind of move forward, I mean, if we want to continue looking at different designs, we could be here for another 3-4 months trying to figure out a plan. And this is just all temporary devices, what we're putting out there. So if we can come to an agreement in some locations on what to put up, we could at least possibly proceed forward with purchasing those and getting those up to kind of see what the impacts are this fall.
yes, and getting back to what Mr. Thalman just said about 132nd and High, that hard turn there. It's kind of sort of where number 3 appears on the list here. I think that's what he was talking about, right? As opposed to 132nd and High is actually right here. But I think, Mr. Thalman, you were referring to that hard turn. Yeah. And that's very true. I mean, my dad lived in Leawood South, so I went up that street a million zillion times. And that is a hard turn, and there's 8 zillion little kids up between there and so what would, I know there's thresholds, I know there's rules. What would stop us from putting up a stop sign, a 3-way stop there? Or at least a stop sign coming down High Drive. There's not even a stop sign coming down High Drive.
There's a stop sign for southbound High Drive at 132nd Street.
Is there?
I thought there was, yeah.
Yeah, there is.
I beg your pardon then.
But we follow, the city's adopted the MUT's Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and they have standards for when you
There it
install a
is.
stop sign. We get requests for stop signs on a regular basis. And if you want to have stop signs on almost every intersection, then you would not follow the MUTCD. But it sets up the guidelines for sight distance, accident information, and then volume. And so when, I believe Todd could probably speak to it better than I could, but that's the reason why we don't want to be, staff would prefer that if you want to send a motion that we consider installing a stop sign, we would go out and collect the data and make sure it's warranted first.
Right.
Related to the three-way stop, there's a lot of specific criteria in the MUTCD for multi-way stop intersections. There's volume requirements, like Dave said. There's also crash histories, those kind of things. But the other thing, the MUTCD is a guidance document, and it's usually very vague in its statements. It never completely comes out and says anything specifically. One of the rare things that it does say is stop signs are not to be used as traffic calming devices, because stop signs have been shown not to work as traffic calming devices. They stop people in that location and speed. They've done studies where, for example, where you have a grid system of blocks in older neighborhoods, they put stop signs at every other intersection, and they found the speeds actually increased between the stop signs because people would stop, they'd accelerate rapidly, get to the next stop sign, stop, and they would have higher speeds between the stop locations than they had prior to installing the stop signs. So there's been numerous studies that show traffic calming is not affected by stop signs, even though it's intuitive to think it would. It's counterintuitive when you look at the data. It doesn't calm traffic. And so that's why the MUTCD specifically says stop signs are not to be used as a traffic control device, and it shall not use as a traffic control device. So that it's very clear that stop signs are prohibited from traffic calming. Three-way stop signs at that location may be valid, but there's some specific criteria we'd have to look at there. I can't quote it off the top of my head to you, but I know there's specific issues on when a multi-way stop is acceptable and when it's not to the MUTCD, and I think it'd be highly unlikely that this location would qualify for a multi-way stop in accordance with MUTCD guidelines.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, hurry, because we've only got 15 minutes, not even 14.
Just one real quick question. I believe everything you say on that, but you're also considering doing a three-way stop with traffic calming devices. That also then also help impact, and would the three-way stop then contribute along with the adjoining traffic calming?
I would say potentially, but it can't be, again, MUTCD prohibits signs, stop signs as traffic calming devices, so the only way we could do a three-way stop at High Drive is if it meets the remaining warrants for a multi-way stop. So it wouldn't be considered a traffic calming device. And the other element of that is the reason we have 5 locations along a corridor of this length is you have to have relatively close spacings for these devices to be effective. If you go, 3 devices in a row and then have 1,000 feet of roadway with no devices on it, then you're going to have high speeds in that location, and people are going to speed up to make up for lost time at the calmed location. So it's a balance along the corridor that makes it effective. It's a routine speed control device of some type along the corridor that continues to make speeds stay low. Otherwise, you will have higher speeds between devices if they're too far apart than you had previous.
Thank you, Todd. To that point, if you look at the memo that Ms. Schaefer and Zach Miller wrote, she talked about location 2, which is just the speed feedback sign. That's the only place we have a sign, and that's a long stretch between 1 to 3 to only have a sign in the middle. And her point was, again, there's anti-speed table people, and she's asking for more right in that number 2 location, which happens to be right in front of her street. So is that the 1,000 feet? It's hard for me. I know it's 5,000 feet all through there, you said, but between 1 and 3, that does seem like a long stretch, and it is straight, and it is downhill. That's all downhill. Well, if you're going east, it's downhill. If you're going east, it's downhill. If you're going west, it's uphill.
Honestly, I share the concerns about the speed feedback signs, about their long-term effectiveness, but that's part of the reason we want to go ahead and install them as temporary devices to see if they are effective or
Right.
not, and to verify whether they have an effect on this corridor. I mean, driver behavior is somewhat localized. Most of the people that drive along this corridor live somewhere in this area. That's just what the street's for. So it's people that are familiar with that corridor for the most part. You're going to have some outside traffic that comes through for deliveries and yard work and those kind of things. So the people that are comfortable and familiar with the street, those types of devices start to fade into the background, just like the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit signs that are out there right now are not making people go 25. These may be effective when we first put them out there, but we may start to see a diminishing effect over time from these speed feedback signs, and that's what we want to study and see if they are effective. And if they're not, then we need to look at something different.
Does,
Julie,
yeah, Marcia?
I want to make a motion because we're getting towards the end of our time.
Okay,
And I'd like to kind of separate. First of all, I'd like to make a motion that Public Works recommend to the council to look into exchanging the yield sign at 132nd Terrace and High to a stop sign.
okay,
That's my first motion.
all right.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any more discussion about just that stop sign?
Question, why does that need to come to the council? Why can't we just recommend to do that right now?
That's what I was gonna say. We get requests on stop signs, and they don't go to this body or go to the council. It's something staff looks at. If the sign's not warranted, then we wouldn't install a stop sign. If it is warranted, it's a phone call down to our maintenance shop, and they install it in a day. So it's straightforward. If you're gonna make a motion that you're directing staff to install it, that would be different, but that staff would not make.
So what if I make a motion to install,
You-
staff to install a stop sign?
And you can do that, but our recommendation at the governing body, it'll show your recommendation, and then it's gonna be staff's recommendation is that we do not. If it doesn't meet the
So
MUTCD.
going back to my motion, should I say the committee is recommending to staff to install a stop sign at 132nd and High?
The first step we should do is actually see if it meets the warrants or not. If it meets the warrants, then there's no need to make a
I've
recommendation.
already looked at it before, and I don't think it did.
No, Todd said
Todd
you
said-
haven't checked the 30-mile-an-hour visibilities. You haven't completed that analysis of that.
That's correct. I need to do some field measurements to verify. I looked at it in Ames mapping
So the
only.
other question is, like, I got a letter from the city of Leawood because everybody in our neighborhood did, that said your street trees must be 17 feet or whatever it is.
14.
14 feet off the curb. We had to, as homeowners, we had to go and get those done, and it said if you didn't have it done within a certain day, that you're, I don't know, fined or whatever. So everybody's, getting, so I guess my question is, can you look at those trees, if in fact they're low, send all the homeowners, the letters that say, your street trees must be 14 feet above the street level, and do that immediately. I mean,
We can investigate that, yeah.
okay.
We can take a
And
look at that.
if
That's
it-
part of that
in fact,
investigation.
If they need to be trimmed up, that letters are sent. Okay.
It's a different issue.
So going back to, we had a motion and a second. Do you want me to withdraw my?
I want a clarification. We've had two discussions about a yield and a stop sign. Are we looking at location 3 or 4 for the stop sign?
4.
Okay, that's 132nd Place.
Terrace.
And High
Terrace.
Drive.
Terrace.
Terrace.
32nd
Terrace and High Drive, not 132nd and High.
Yes.
Right.
Just to make sure, we're looking at Place.
We're not looking.
We're
No, we're looking at terrace.
132nd Terrace.
Right,
Terrace,
not
Terrace.
the three-way stop he was
Okay.
talking about.
And
Just
it's going to be a stop sign only for eastbound, not for High Drive itself.
Correct,
Correct.
if warranted.
Okay.
And your
My
motion,
second stands then.
a motion is to install it, not for Public Works to investigate,
Right.
because Public Works already said they would come back to us and deny that.
I think the neighbors would be in favor of that too, so I second that.
But just to be clear, if we make the motion or the recommendation to council, staff's recommendation is going to be not to do that unless it's merited by the warrants, right? So there's going to be conflicting recommendations going to the council.
Right, and it doesn't necessarily mean by the time that comes to council that you'll have the chance to investigate that. So you would do a flat denial, only assuming you don't have time to investigate it.
Correct. Well,
Correct.
yeah, if we investigate it and it meets the warrants, we'll just go out and do it. And that would probably occur, I'm guessing, before the council meeting in August.
So I think
But
all
if
we
it-
need to do is
Yes.
request them to proceed with
Me-
completing that evaluation
Me-
at
me-
an expedient manner as soon as possible.
Correct.
And I don't think the motion is merited to go to the council. I think
Right, I
they've
agree
already
with that.
said they'll go do it. We've asked them to do it. I
Right,
think
and that
that's it.
doesn't even have to be a motion? That's a
We'll just
motion?
go- yeah, we can go out and look
It's
at
in
it.
the record right
Yeah.
now. It's
Yeah,
in
okay,
the minutes.
so let it be heard. Well, we have a motion and a second on the table, so we have to vote for the motion
Well,
and the
you
second
can
on the
withdraw
table.
a second, I can withdraw my motion.
Okay, are you withdrawing your second and your first? Okay,
Right.
all right, thank you. All right, so then we are directing staff as soon as possible to move forward with the study of the stop sign at 132nd Terrace and High Drive. Okay,
I would say, I think it needs to be stronger, that we are instructing them to review and install a stop sign.
What if our review says a stop sign isn't warranted?
if your review says a
Right.
stop
We
sign
don't
is
know
not
that the
warranted.
stop sign
So
is
then
legally
it would
allowed by
go
the
to
MUTCD.
council to override
It-
your
it-
recommendation.
It wouldn't, it's not going to a council because it's not a motion.
But you can make that motion just to do it regardless.
I
but
think this
don't
is just a
know
good
how
compromise, so
far
we
that
need to
goes.
get more information.
Right, so once we'll be back talking about this project again, probably in the next month or two, and then at that point, we can tell you the results of the study, and then you can decide at that point whether, if we come back and say it's not warranted, then you can make a motion at that point and then take it up.
But if
But
you
I think
find
it-
it's warranted,
I think
it'll
we need to
go
look
up.
at, right, I think we need to let, slow down on that and just let staff look at it and just see if it does meet the warrants, if we can follow the MUTCD. That's my recommendation.
And as long as we're doing that, looking at the street trees makes sense to me too, because I got the same letter. And then we were all having to get that, halfway recently. So, okay, so we'll look at the stops, or we'll investigate the stop sign, we'll investigate the street trees.
Heights, yeah.
The height of the street trees. So then the question on the table is, are we making a recommendation for exhibit number 4 at this point in time? That's the question on the table today,
As temporary devices.
as temporary devices.
Is it possible to make a motion to do, I'm hearing a lot of comments about, like, there's too many events and things like that. Like I said, I like to have the idea of a temporary installation for some of these items, people can experience them. Is it possible to make a recommendation to proceed with the Exhibit 4 with maybe only items 2 through 5? Like eliminating one of the speed table. They don't need 3 speed tables out there to just understand what they're gonna experience.
Yeah, and
Is
that's,
that
But it goes to, there's a long stretch,
Yep.
so if you have one and then you go a long stretch. I kind of think, my feeling right now is that number 4 may be great, but it seems like overkill, somewhat. And I'm not sure I'm into the islands, just because of all the issues and
so I think.
redrawing people's yards.
So what I think I'm hearing is 1, 2, 3, 5, as they're written, and then number 4, we're investigating putting a stop sign there as opposed to the median islands right now.
Well,
So I'd like to add, if we're looking at number 4 and we want to make changes to 4, it could impact what we do at 5.
Okay,
So my recommendation would be that maybe we look at 1 through 3, 1, 2, and 3,
okay,
recommend that to the governing body, and
Okay.
then we can continue to work with Wilshire Place on 4 and 5 to see if we can come up with some different options where they're,
okay, so if we do 1, 2, 3, and then we're looking into the stop sign and the trees for 4, at least we're trying to do something right there. And then 5, as you said, if we take away the medians, then we'll change 5, or we might change 5 or may not. But again, this speed table on 1 and 3 is still gonna it's still gonna have to be ordered, and it's nothing that's gonna happen anytime, like.
Temporary.
that's correct. It's at least probably 2 months out before we order it, from when the governing body
But then
So-
we run
authorizes.
into, what, 2 months later, we pick them up because of snow.
So why can we not at least order the 3 speed tables to begin with? Because we know it's gonna be a delay, and number 5, a speed table is likely to be a third is likely to be someplace. So at
can do
least
that,
we
yeah.
order it.
Yeah, we could do that.
that was $20,000, just, I mean, again, if you're gonna expect three of them to go in, then that makes sense, but just to have them out there. I guess I'm confused too, because I thought the biggest speed problem really was along that 3, 4, 5 section where
That's
it's
what I
kind of
thought
downhill.
too. That's what I
So
thought.
is a speed table, I'm seeing
Between
two
1
out
and
there
3
that
are your
two's
highest
the big
speeds on
one.
the corridor.
I feel
Between-
like I'm ready to phone a friend here.
Todd is saying between 1 and 3 are the highest speeds.
That's really the big area.
That's the downhill section.
So I would support what David just suggested of doing the 1, 2, and 3, put 2 speed tables and a flashing sign out, let the neighborhood go. I'm not opposed to putting the islands at 4 temporarily, and they're just cones, but I'm good with what David suggested. Put a couple speed tables and a flashing sign out there, let's get the materials ordered. That's a start. That doesn't prevent them from coming up with new solutions at 4 and 5 and adding on later.
I want to make sure we understand too that installing a stop sign at 132nd Terrace is not going to affect speeds at all on High
Right.
Drive.
Right.
So that is not part of the traffic calming discussion,
Right.
in my opinion. That is a separate issue.
That's a neighborhood issue.
Right, and so I just want to make
That's
sure
why I
that
pulled
if
it
we
out.
pull devices out of the traffic calming element of it, that has nothing to do with the stop sign installation.
Understood.
So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page there.
Understood,
Okay.
thank you.
One quick question.
Yes,
If we do the 1, 2, and 3, and look at 4 and 5, my question is, how much if we get a couple extra of the flashing signs to put like on around 4 or 5 or something temporarily? Because we can use those other places, right?
Yes. Yeah, they're solar powered, so we can move
We can
those.
move them around. So if we ordered a couple just temporarily while we're studying 4 and 5, to put up just a visual,
because we're ordering one for 2 anyway.
Right. We're going
Does
to order
that
2
still
of them.
take
so-
months to get?
It takes 6 weeks from when we place the order to receive the equipment, and then maybe another week or so to put it up. So we have to assemble it and install it. So you're looking at about 7 weeks. And so if this would go to the governing body the first Monday in August. And so if you look at, so that puts us all the way to the end of September before, it'd be the earliest we could get these installed.
well, that makes even more sense, because we don't want to put temporary stuff in that we're going to have to pull up in November, right? But the signs can stay there forever. I mean, you don't have to pull those up.
Well, we would pull them up if we get a traffic, whenever, so if we decided next spring to put a speed table somewhere around number 4, we
Right,
would pull
put
those
them
signs
up.
out.
Right.
But we'll
replace it.
have them from
Yeah, I mean,
August
it would be
to
a good,
whatever.
it would be a good test also to see multiple devices to see how it impacts the speed through that corridor. But as Todd said, a lot of times you may lose effectiveness over time. And so by only having the radar feedback up there for a few months, you may not get the full understanding of what the long-term improvements are.
But it would
for that.
mitigate Todd's concern that there wouldn't be any kind of traffic calming at 4 and 5. That would extend some, even, I mean, may not be as effective as a speed table, but it would extend something beyond to that. I mean, I'd support that.
And in terms of data collection, we already have a location at number 2 with speed feedback signs. It would be nice to have other devices in the corridor to gauge their effectiveness and see if they're worthwhile, as opposed to putting the same device out again.
Like I said, the islands in there, there's part of me that says it's worth to put it in so people see what it is, just to have it temporarily. But I think 3 speed tables is excessive. That's kind of where I feel like we don't need three temporary speed tables out there for them.
So do I hear a motion to proceed with 1, 2, 3, and instead of ordering 1 speed feedback sign, we order 2 speed feedback signs? So somewhere in the vicinity between 4 and 5, well, and then we're going to proceed with the stop sign investigation at 4, and then we are doing some kind of a speed feedback sign at 5, as opposed to another speed table right now. Is that, do I hear a motion to that effect?
Yeah, we don't need to talk about stop sign, but
So my
No,
question
we've
is,
already directed
Do
it.
you have those speed feedbacks on each side of the street?
Yeah, so that's,
So we
so we
have
want to say there's
4.
either 2 pair or 4.
2 pair, okay.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
go for it, Marcia.
Go, you
No,
go.
go, go.
No,
You
you go.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we proceed with temporary speed tables at 1 and 3, and the speed feedback signs at location 2 and somewhere in the vicinity of 4 and 5.
And it's, and,
temporary
right,
installation
and the
as well.
stop sign at.
No, the stop
or-
sign-
already did that.
stop
Right,
sign's
that's,
separate.
that's
not
understood,
related.
that's happening. That's
that's not in
understood,
the
that's
motion.
happening. It's a separate matter, that is not traffic calming.
Right. I don't want to
Okay.
get that, I don't want to get that into this because
Exactly.
Todd's comment is that's
Well, we
not.
already talked about it.
Exactly, so that's a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second, we have a motion and a second. Is there any dialogue about the motion on the table? Andrew, you okay? You hear it? You know it? We need your vote. Andrew? There he is.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Yes.
Yes, okay, good. He understands the motion. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Andrew, didn't hear you. Are you an aye? Or I think he was an aye.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All opposed, say nay. All right, then the motion passes. For now, we have a,
We're off dead center.
we're off dead center for sure, and we'll, okay, great. All right, thank you, one and all. Is there, where's my agenda? Is there any other new business adjournment? No, there is not. With no additional business, I move that our Public Works meeting is adjourned. Thank you, one and all.